Sam.
Okay. Yeah, just, I think, what is Sam's email address? It's, Silver Image,
Yeah, it's Pro 82, 89.
Silver Image 8, isn't it?
Something.
Because we tried the Silver Image Pro and somebody sent it back. There's no Sam here.
All right, so just a couple housekeeping things. No class next week. I'll be in Holland, Michigan. So my first travel in over a year and a half. So I'm kind of excited about getting back on an airplane. I think I'm not really sure one way or the other. So
You have to have your shot.
yeah, no. I have a fake.
Just the miles.
That's right. I have a fake COVID passport, but no. So I'll be in Holland, Michigan, leaving Tuesday, coming back Friday. So we've got some stuff we're going to do up there at a lab in Holland, of all places. So no class next Thursday. We'll finish up following Thursday. Take a little bit of a break, and then the summer session starts right in June. So that June 6th.
That sounds right.
I don't know.
7.
7th.
Monday the 7th. So
Are you going to have a Monday and a Thursday class?
No, just Monday.
Just
like
Monday.
I was thinking the next one was.
Bridget and I didn't use your phone today.
Oh, did she? Wow.
No class on the 20th, class on the 27th.
Okay.
Summer starts the 7th.
The 7th.
Right.
And then it's every week
Yes.
on a Thursday.
6 weeks.
On a Monday.
On Monday. No Thursday night class.
At 6:30.
6:30.
That's what I missed.
6:30 to 8:30. No Thursday.
On Mondays, 6:30.
And then we'll get ready for the next semester.
Just towards the end of that session, I might have somebody to record, because usually towards the middle end of July.
No, you can't. No. Stop.
We're gonna have a
We're gonna all
vacation.
go
No,
with
what's
you.
that? What is that?
So
We're all going. Yeah, we're all going with you on vacation. We'll just do class wherever you're on vacation.
Okay.
So
I'm going to see that.
we stopped with this slide last week, and I really felt like I wanted to finish up the slide deck. Not really sure what I'm going to do next week, because I don't want to start something new. But I do have an idea about continuing this in the fall. I've got another session that I'm working on for the fall. But I don't want to start that on Thursday, so I'm not really sure what we're going to do Thursday, but we'll play by ear and see what happens. So it's really interesting to me about words and dialogue and vocabulary and the things that go on in our mind, the things that we listen with our eyes, things we see, things we read, things we pick up. You know, all of the stuff that's out there that really vies for our attention and really wants us to focus on all of this stuff that will take us in that direction or move us away from, you know, really what's primary, what's important. And I think the two primary things that are critical in our walk and in our belief system, in our actions, our behaviors, really there are two things that are going on that really become important to us. One is listening with our eyes. We look and see things, and we listen. And so there's this internal dialogue, this internal messaging that's going on as we look and see the world around us, and we interact with that. Things are happening. Things happen. Circumstances, situations, people. Stuff that's just at times difficult to deal with. And I don't want to minimize, the reality of that stuff. But what happens, I think, is as we get engaged in the stuff, we lose sight of really walking in this place of peace. We lose peace in this place of being steadfast. It gets difficult, it gets hard, and the more that happens, the more that erodes sort of this underpinning of being in the kingdom, the more we teeter and we continue to focus more and more and more on what's drawing our attention. And that happens when we see it. We see stuff, things are happening to us, we look at it, we see it, it creates a dialogue. There's this internal dialogue that's going on. And we listen to that dialogue. We pay attention to it, and the more we listen to that dialogue, the more we focus on, and the more we teeter and move, and the more we kind of come into more of an agreement with that thing, whatever it is, whatever's going on, whatever the circumstance is. And it's really difficult once we get there to get out of it, right? Because then once we get there, we just want whatever's happening to go away, right? We just want it to be fixed. And that creates a whole nother set of issues when we start trying to fix what we're fixated on, right? That doesn't work either, right? And so it's sort of this compounding of issues, once that begins to happen. So, why I ask you all the time, what do you see, what are you looking at, what are you reading, what are you paying attention to? It could be almost anything, especially the news, if you're paying too close attention to the news, if there are struggles at work, or there's struggles at home, or there's struggles in your community, things that are happening, you will literally begin to have this internal dialogue about what it is that you're looking at, and you'll continue to focus on that. Remember, we said a long time ago that you become what you focus on. And so we gravitate into that, and then once we get there, because we're in anguish, right? We're in this place where we're like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. We're in anguish. This is difficult. It's hard. We don't like it. It's causing all this emotional turmoil. We just want it gone. We want it to go away. And a lot of times we pray, make it go away. And Holy Spirit says to us, well, why don't you change? It's not going away. You learn to deal better with the situation. And we don't like that answer. We don't like that. And so then we start trying to engage and fix. And when we do that, again, it's just a compounding issue. So this internal dialogue that's running around with us eventually finds its way out of our mouth, right? We eventually begin to talk about it. A lot of times our talking about it can be, now sometimes you need to vent, okay? Sometimes you need to sit down in front of somebody and just vent. All right, that's not what I'm talking about, all right? I mean, you got to talk about things, and you got to talk through things. And if you can't, then you stop, and that creates a whole nother situation of issues that we could talk about for the next 6 weeks. But I'm just talking about now, not the venting, not the healthy side of being able to sit down and express your frustration to somebody. I'm just talking about what happens when we're over here and we're in anguish and we're in the situation, we want it to go away, we start complaining. We start complaining about the issue, we start complaining about the people in the issue, we start complaining about all kinds of other stuff that's going on. And these words, all of these words that come out of our mouth, not only now have we focused on the issue and we're in the issue, now we're sowing seeds out of the issue, around the issue, and there's another compounding effect then on that, is the fruit of your words in the situation. You're just making the situation worse. And it's really, really hard at that time, very difficult. Then once you get in it and it's you don't like it, you start complaining, you start talking about it constantly, and the more you talk, the more seed that comes out of your mouth, the more of that harvest you're going to continue to reap. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost like a self-perpetuating misery is what we end up creating. And so, we see these primarily two dialogues, one in your head and one in your mouth. And really what's interesting is our words will create an environment that attracts lightness. And so what ends up happening, our words are like magnets almost. And so the more we talk, the more we sow that seed, it attracts likeness. And that's just a principle of the kingdom of God, this attraction of negativity, this attraction of the pejorative, this attraction of a sowing seed. You know, we've heard the expression misery loves company. Well, yeah, it does, doesn't it? And not only that, what happens is, not only does misery love company, but then we get into a situation where, again, I'm not talking about venting, all right? Please separate the two. There's a moment in time where you've got to sit down with somebody and you can vent and get it out. But what I'm talking about is now broadening the circle of offense. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're looking for somebody to complain to. Because you want somebody to agree with you that you're in misery, and you want them to be miserable too. And you typically find somebody who's miserable to be miserable with, don't you? I mean, that's this likeness thing. And you find somebody to agree with you. And then the next thing you know, you find another person to agree with you. And then before you know it, you've got coffee time at your house on Thursday night with 12 people who are in misery with you and agree that everything is miserable. And you end up trying to create something that doesn't need to happen. A lot of church splits happen that way. Right? So pastor says something that you don't like. Next thing you know, you go to find somebody that agrees with you. Then before you know it, you got 12 people meeting at your house on Thursday night. And somebody looks at you and says, hey, Rhonda, you could do this. Why don't you start a church? And you go, yeah, that's a perfect idea. Well, we got one right here. We got 12 people at the house. Right? We'll call it the First Church of the Miserable, and we'll start right here. and that's what happens. I mean, it happens more than you really want to believe it does. And so we end up in this group where if we're down here and we're broadening the circle of offense and we're sowing into it. Next, like I said, I'm telling you, if you think back in your own history, in your own life, and you find these times where it's been very difficult and difficult seasons in your life, what you end up doing is you will end up finding people who will agree with you, people who have had the same experience, people who want to sit down and have coffee with you and talk about all the misery and all the trauma and all the past experience, etc., etc. There is nothing healthy about that. Nothing. And there's nothing beneficial about that. Nothing. Not a thing. And if you're not careful, it really becomes sort of this place that will literally transform how you carry yourself, how you see the world, how you look, how you talk. And before you know it, it will impact your health. It will absolutely impact your health at the end of it. I mean, it just happens. I've seen it over and over and over and over and over and over again. So we've got to see that this internal dialogue will take us away. It steers us away from the text. It steers us away from discomfort, from the interruption of what you want from your normal routine. You see, sometimes we have got to understand that it's not about changing the situation, it's about changing you. Holy Spirit wants you. And while we want the situation to change, we focus on it so much that we lose sight of the fact that this whole thing may be simply about us. It's about us changing. It's about us being different in the midst of whatever's going on. You may pray and pray and pray, and the situation may never change. It may never go away. What are you going to do then? Now, obviously we'd love to live on the cloud and strum our harp and eat big grapes from the promised land. And we do get to do that. But James says quite plainly to us that don't be dismayed when these things happen. As a matter of fact, not only does he say don't be dismayed, he says count it joy. I mean, I'm like, are you kidding me? right? Yeah. When I say, hey, Jimmy, hey, listen, well, what is this verse about? Count it all joy when diverse things happen. This is talking about more than a thing. I mean, this is talking about sometimes a lifetime of things, right? That are swirling around us. My wife tells me all the time that the heart of the matter is the heart of the matter, right? And a lot of times we find ourselves in these predicaments, these situations, these circumstances, and we focus on the event so much that we become the event instead of allowing Holy Spirit to transform us in the midst of the event. And so this really becomes a lot of times about, can we transform? So recognizing the resistance, right? And I love this term, the flip the vocabulary, right? Now, that's difficult because sometimes you got to have somebody look you dead in the face and say, flip your vocabulary, right? Somebody's got to ask the hard questions, right? Somebody's got to look at you and say, hey, why are you saying that? Why is this happening? What is this pattern? Why are you in this predicament? What's going on? And a lot of times, if we're here and we're in it and we're in the midst of it, and then you have somebody say, "What are you doing?" You get offended at the person saying, "What are you doing?" Right? And so it's interesting how all of a sudden we gotta start flipping the vocabulary, because you got to remember, vocabulary changes culture. And you see, I think what's happened in the church over the years is this dynamic of being in this situation and having somebody come and say, David, why are you doing that? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about why this is happening. Have you thought about this? Have you seen this pattern? Your words. Let's refocus. And it takes somebody who can ask that question. But it's a two-way street, because then on the other side of that, right, David's got to say, oh my gosh, I didn't see it. I didn't know that. Help me walk through this. So this idea of discipleship and mentoring and all, we lose this in the culture of the church because it's difficult. It's really hard to do. It takes a lot of maturity. It really does, on both ends. I mean, on the person who's asking the question and on the person who's the question being asked too. It takes a lot of growth and a lot of maturity, a lot of trust, and an atmosphere where you feel safe and you don't feel threatened. And even if you do, you still got to have an atmosphere where it's okay to be threatened, and it's okay to get angry, and it's okay to say whatever you need to say. And the person asking the question can't react and go, "You stupid idiot! What did you?" And then we just compound the issue, don't we? We make it worse, right? And so this flipping the narrative and resisting, we resist change deep at a genetic level. We don't like change. And you got to get over that. I mean, change is constantly occurring. The whole concept of transformation is about change. The whole concept of maturity is about change. The whole concept of running this race to the end is about change. Everything about your Christian walk, Christ-likeness, growing in the sense of acuity and awareness, being one with Christ, all of that is about change. This whole Christian walk is about change. It fundamentally is about how can you change from the old to the new. How can you then change your thoughts, your habits, your patterns, your behaviors, your worldview, your information, your experience, your perspective, your words, how you think, what you believe, right? This whole thing is about change. And it becomes really difficult because change, we almost have bought into the belief and the lie that, well, I just don't like change. Oh, okay, well then you like status quo. If you don't like change, you like status quo. And if you like status quo, you're never going to grow or transform or mature. You're always going to remain at the place that you say, I like status quo. I like it here. This is good. And it may be good for a season. It really may be good for a season. But eventually that season's going to come to an end, and if you continue to stay there, you're going to stagnate, and you're going to die. Maybe not physically, that's all I'm talking about. You're going to die spiritually, your soul will harden, you'll get bitter. People will pass you on, people will move forward. And then there's a whole other compounding issues of jealousy and envy. And it's just nasty when we don't embrace the concept that we are always moving forward. Remember, go all the way back to the first year. What did we say about the kingdom? The kingdom was always what? Advancing. The kingdom is always advancing, always moving forward, always enlarging, always growing, always changing. Yet he's the same today, yesterday, and forever. Right? Now, if that's the case and the kingdom is in us, then we're growing and enlarging and changing too. What happens is people resist change. Again, I think that's one of the difficulties of really understanding discipleship. We've talked about this in this class many times. Look at the Gospels and look at Peter in the Gospels. I mean, look at his life. Look at how the Gospels portrayed Peter. And then go read 1st and 2nd Peter. They're not the same person. They're not the same person. It is, but it's not. You know what I mean? So what happened? What happened to the Peter, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the Peter who wrote 1st and 2nd Peter? Right? I mean, what change? It was transformation. So transformational change, the paradigm of being transformed into the likeness of Christ, it involves change constantly. It's a constant place of being in a position where change becomes something that you have to then embrace and say, you know what? I get it. I am not going to settle for status quo. I'm just not. And sometimes what happens, we identify, we settle. We find a place of comfort and ease, and we settle. Both are bad. Whether you settle in the event that you're identifying with, and you settle in the circumstance, and it becomes who you are, and everything about you, your vocabulary and your belief system, everything is shaped by whatever it is that you focused on. That's really bad. But it's equally as bad if you find a place of comfort and safety and you stay there too. That's bad too. Because status quo, and you stop moving and growing and enlarging, you're eventually gonna stagnate. And the kingdom is not about stagnation. The kingdom is not about status quo. The kingdom is not about standing still. And so the concept really of discipleship, if we took the model of discipleship in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, so what changed these guys? And you go through and you pick out some of the lessons that Messiah taught these guys. He asked some pretty blunt, hard questions, didn't he? I mean, I chuckle at communion, right? He was talking about communion, you eat of me, drink of my blood, right? And the whole crowd was there, and half of them leave, right? And here you are, you're one of the 12 standing with him, and you've heard this. You've heard exactly what it is said, and you're watching everybody exit, right? And I'm sure, I know the narrative doesn't capture this, but I'm sure as they were exiting, I doubt seriously what they were saying were polite. This man's lost his mind, eat of his body, drink of his blood, he's crazy, right? I mean, can you imagine some of the dialogue that was going on with these guys that were leaving? And here I am, one of the 12, I'm standing behind watching this transpire, and then he wheels around and he points his finger at him and he says, "Are you going to go too?" All right, that's... How about the lesson of the fish and the loaves, and the second time they get on the boat and one of the boys says, "Well, what is this about? Did we forget lunch?" And he turns to him and looks at him and he says, "Why are you still focused on lunch? Have you not captured what I've been trying to teach you? Pretty tough. And so if we want to adopt the model of discipleship and we use Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and we use Messiah with the boys as sort of the model, that sometimes get behind me, Satan. Talking to Pete, right? I mean, difficult moments, right? You couldn't stay with me for an hour and pray? These were tough questions. And it takes a lot of courage to ask those questions. And it takes a lot of courage on the other end to receive the questions, but then do something about it. And so, I mean, Pete goes from get behind me, Satan, to writing 1st and 2nd Peter. I mean, what a juxtaposition, what a change that occurred. And I think a lot of it, I mean, again, here's Pete. Pete, do you love me? Well, of course I love you. Are you crazy? Pete, do you love me? Yeah. Pete, do you... Well, no, wait a minute. Why are you asking me 3 times the same question? You know? Well, why are you doing it? And Pete actually says that. How about washing the feet? No, you can't wash my feet. No, I've got to. Well, then wash all of them. No, Pete, I can't. I'm washing your feet, right? And so we kind of get lost in the shuffle of really understanding change, because if we don't understand that, then the byproduct of the fall, which is the resistance of change, never gets dealt with in our life. It will always be a residual thing in us that will constantly eat at us if we're not careful. Now, understand, you come through the veil of the cross, this should be taken care of. Right or wrong?
Mm-hmm.
You got a new DNA when you come through the cross?
Yep.
All right? That should be taken care of. So my question to you, if that's taken care of, why then do we gravitate back to not wanting to change?
Stay in the box over there.
Stay in a box. Yeah, we do. We like the old. We like the old man. What comfort? Comfort. It's
What we're
easy.
familiar with.
Familiar with. We like it, don't we? And so what happens is we gravitate back to the old. Why? Because we're focusing on it. Nothing in the lesser connects you to the greater, does it? And so, we've taken that old coat off, but we really haven't. We kind of got one foot in both boxes, right? We're trying to live sort of not totally in the world, but we don't want to give up all the things of the world, right? There's still some things we really like that are in the world, and we want to hold on to them. And then because we're in both camps, and again, what's the narrative say? That a man caught between two opinions is unstable in everything he does, right? And so you're tossed about, right? Well, of course that's going to happen. And so because of that, because we're in between, right? We're not saying, no, this is it. We're still we're looking at the bright, shiny object, right? And again, as I stated at the beginning of the class, the more we focus on that, the more we become what the bright, shiny object is. Mm-hmm. And then it really becomes hard to change daily.
And once you do that, you fall back into sinful nature, because if you're not focused on Him, then sin's right there.
Right there. Then the narrative said that it sits there, waits as a trap.
Mm-hmm.
To spring the trap, right? Mm-hmm. And so fear, right? This thing, fear. We're going to deal with fear when we talk about faith in the summer session. But fear, everybody's afraid of something, it seems like. I mean, this gas thing just cracked me up. Some of the pictures I saw, people filling up trash bags with gasoline, putting them in the trunk of their car. I'm like, oh. And not only is it dumb, right? I mean, the CPSC felt they had to come out and publicly state that a trash bag was not an approved container for gasoline. What? Like, yeah, it's not. I mean, I get it, but the CPSC came out with a public service announcement and basically said that trash bags were not an approved container for gasoline. No kidding, right?
As evidenced by the links.
Exactly, right? But I mean, and so I mean, all of the panic. Go all the way back to the toilet paper and now the panic to the guy where the gas is back and everything is fine. It was one day we had gas lines in Martinsville, Virginia, of all places. I mean, when I left to come to work on Wednesday, the sheets on 220 South had no gas, none. The Valero right up above our house had no gas. The Kroger has a gas pumps, and I was told that by 5 o'clock there were lines at the gas pump that stretched all the way past First Horizon Bank in the parking lot up towards McDonald's. Fear grips. Fear keeps us really in comfort. Fear says, don't risk change. Don't risk discipleship. Don't risk being asked the hard questions. Don't risk moving forward. Don't risk saying no. Right? My wife tells me all the time, no is very powerful. No is a powerful word, right? Very powerful word, right? Fear keeps us from saying no. Why? Why won't we say no? Somebody comes to us and says, United, blah, blah, blah. No. Why don't we say that? Because we're afraid that person's going to get mad at us. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? I got news for you. You're not going to please everybody all the time. People are going to get mad at you. And especially if you're the one asking the hard questions, right? You don't volunteer for this job. If you do, you need your head examined, I think. And so, we don't engage because, well, I'm afraid how Maggie's going to react or respond when I tell her, Maggie, you got to stop doing this. What do you mean? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. I mean, we jump down. I mean, we immediately go there, right? Somebody comes and says, man, you really offended me. Okay, sorry. What are you going to do about it? I don't have the offense. You're the one that's offended. What are you going to do about it? And so we get stuck in these places that, and really we comfort, stagnate, and this slow spiral of death that occurs out of that, right? Man, we really don't want somebody, as my wife would say, ripping us a new butthole. And we really don't like that, right? We really don't want the new butthole, right?
And that the person with the offense is almost hold you for ransom as well.
Yes, they will.
Keep on.
Yeah, hold you for ransom. Exactly. And not only will they hold you for ransom, they'll withdraw their friendship, or they'll withdraw you from your presence, and they'll passively aggressively deal with it instead of dealing with it, right? And so we end up in a situation where what typically happens is in those types of situations, those people will leave the church, right? They'll just leave instead of dealing with the issue. And you've heard me say 100,000 times, you will enter as you leave. So whatever the condition is that you leave, you're going to enter your next place in that same condition. I'm telling you, I've seen it over and over and over and over and over again. And so, hey, look, if you're going to leave, I get it, but deal with the issue before you leave so you can go wherever you're going with a clean slate, because you don't want to take that with you. And you do it. And again, that's how church splits occur. That's how attraction happens. That's how you end up in the wilderness. That's how you get shipwrecked. That's how things fall apart in your life. That's how you walk away from the church. Man, we were talking the other night about the election and all of this stuff that's happened since November. Well, let me ask you a question. What if this had nothing to do with the election? What if this had nothing to do at all about Donald Trump? What if it had nothing to do about Joe Biden? What if it had nothing to do with the Republican Party or the Democrat Party. Would have had nothing to do with any of that. And the whole situation occurred to reveal the heart of the church, the heart of the believer.
That's what it's all about.
Right? I mean, the church got so focused on Democrat, Republican, Biden, Trump, the stolen election, whatever. I don't know where you are on that fence. It really doesn't matter anymore. It really doesn't. However, what matters is, what did it reveal in your heart? What did it reveal in the heart of the church? And so I find it interesting, we spent so much time focusing on the Ken Clement prophecy, right? And it said he would serve 2 terms, did it not? It didn't say consecutive terms, did it? I'm just suggesting things. I'm just talking to you about this. Right? And so we thought it was 2 consecutive terms. We thought he was just going to win re-election. And that would be his 2 terms. Well, what if this whole situation was to reveal the heart of the church, to get the church in position to receive the harvest the next go-round? I'm just asking questions. That's all I'm doing, right? I mean, we stop thinking, right? We get so caught up in the situation, we get so caught up in the thing, we're focused on it, and we become it, our vocabulary, because we identify with it, and then we settle. How many people have settled here? I mean, think about, does everybody understand what's happening with Jeff Jansen right now? Has anybody heard about Jeff Jansen, Global Fire Ministry? Jeff has been to our church. All right, he's leaving his wife, and he's leaving ministry to pursue his own interest. How can that happen? Well, I think a lot of it is because he got into this position, right? I mean, look, first of all, if you heard and you felt Donald Trump was going to win re-election, that's what you heard. That's fine. And he doubled down and then tripled down and quadrupled down and said something's going to happen in January and February and this is going to. And then finally, I guess he just gets to the point where he's so identified with what's going on that he makes these really rash, silly decisions. Now, I believe leaving his wife was something that was happening way before the event occurred, right? I mean, that just didn't happen. He just didn't wake up on Tuesday and say, I'm leaving my wife because of this thing, right? That seed had been there, but I do think the situation accelerated that and exacerbated that in his life to the point that he made a decision that now has impacted his entire ministry, right? This can happen to any of us, just that.
When things like this happen, though, how many pastors came out and said, how has it changed your relationship with God?
Well,
because in this class, we know, everything goes on around you.
Yes.
But the whole purpose is your relationship with God. I'll never leave you nor forsake you. So no matter who's in the presidency, who's the governor, if there's gas, if there's no gas, if there's food, if there's no food, he wouldn't let the birds starve.
No.
Would he do that for you?
No.
Would he do that to you?
And really, I mean, there were some voices saying that. This church said that repeatedly, time and time again, over and over and over. And so, we've got to see and understand. And the goal then is to quiet the negative and the pejorative internal dialogue and focus on the task ahead. Can we do that? Can we silence that?
So the check is, because it sounds like the guy you were talking about was resisting change, doubling down.
Absolutely.
So that's like the symptom.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're saying God doesn't change, it's like, so then obviously the gospel happening is us changing, and He's not changing.
Correct.
So the gospel's just happening right there.
All the time. It unfolds in our life daily, all the time. Terry, you got something?
Yeah, so it's like The Lord takes me back to the children of Israel in the desert, in that journey, a lot of times, and it deals with the fact that, you know, along the way, different ones of them would get to a place where they said, we're not going any further. This is where we're putting our tent peg in. This is where we're going to leave ourselves, and the rest of them can go on. But the ones who kept going were following the fire by night and the cloud by day, which is the presence of the Lord.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we make those decisions, and the Lord will allow us to make those decisions, but
There's
His
consequences.
presence keeps going.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. His presence keeps going. And you know, I find it interesting too. Think about the two tribes that stayed on the other side of the Jordan and didn't enter the promised land. And there were two tribes of Israel, right? Dan was one. I can't remember the other one. But they didn't cross the Jordan into the promised land. Now, they were asked, Joshua asked them, okay, you can stay here if you want, but you need to help us fight. And they agreed to it. And when the promised land was settled, they retreated back on the other side of the Jordan.
Is it Ephraim?
May have been. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being that close to your promise and saying, I'm not going any further?
Or fighting for it and
Oh.
then turn around and go back.
And bowing out.
Yeah.
Right? Then you DOR, right? It's like you get to day 4 of Hell Week in Buds and then you ring the bell, right?
Right.
1 day left. And can you imagine that, right? And so I think it's important for us to understand how we this paradigm, these shiftings, it's revolutionary. It's a new concept, right? I don't think it's so much new as I think it's emerging. I think it's re-emerging. I think it's coming to the fore again. I think it's being restored. I think discipleship was lost, and I think the cycle had to wait for fathers and true apostles to emerge, and I think this cycle of discipleship is coming back. And so what happens in these shifts, it's a new way. It replaces old belief systems, doesn't it? And old ways of doing things. And when we get to this place, that's where forward motion comes. Right? When you can see that your old belief system is keeping you in a position, and somebody points it out and says, Terry, look, we need to deal with this. This is keeping you here. It's preventing you from moving forward, right? And you're in a place where you know that's healthy, right? And you can say, yeah, I'm in. Okay, help me see it. Help me get beyond that. Help me grow. That's where forward progress and momentum is built, right? And then the discipline of doing these little incremental things every day. And you got to do this stuff every day. This isn't something you can just say, oh, I'll do it every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or when I feel like it. If I get a better offer, I'm going to the golf course, right? And I'm not going to think about this, right? These are things that you have to do every single day. The habit of moving forward, of progress, of maturity, is a process that is happening every day. You can either choose to engage it, as you said, Terry. God's presence is moving. You can either choose to engage it, or you're going to remain where you are in that same spot. And it may take somebody to come up and say, Maggie, why are you in the same spot? Well, I didn't know I was. Yeah, you are. Let's talk about this. Let's move forward. Come on. Right? And again, this whole concept of being able to do that, right, I think is emerging. I think this is being restored to the church. And I think what you're going to see is once this happens, I think you're going to see exponential transformation and change in the body of Christ, because you're going to see people change.
Yes.
You're going to really see them not only change, but then really step into their promise. So what happens is there has to be an example to help guide us to a conclusion, right? And so if you don't have an example, you don't know what the conclusion looks like. You don't have a reference point, right? And so, it's really interesting to me. There are two places about this in the narrative that really surprised me. One is right in the beginning of the Gospels, when Messiah comes to the boys and just simply says, "Follow me." Now, I don't know if there had to have been some kind of background knowledge about who he was and what he was doing. Maybe, maybe not. Narrative is unclear about that. But we know that he had been around, right, for a while. When he started doing this, he was known, in Jerusalem, in Judea. People knew who he was. And then, he walks up, to you and says, "Cindy, come follow me." Now, these guys left everything. And as a matter of fact, we know towards the end of the Gospels, they had this great debate about, well, he's dead. I'm going back to what I left. Right? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine being at this place? Now they've been told that third day I'm coming back. Don't understand what's getting ready to happen. He told them clearly everything that was getting ready to take place, and it happened. Everything. And then after it happened, there's this debate going on with the boys about going back to what they left. Well, we shouldn't find that surprising, because the nation of Israel got to a point where they said, "Let's go back to what we left." Slavery? You want to go back to Egypt to eat leeks and onions, or is a leek an onion? I don't know. Leeks and make bricks with no straw, and why do you want to do those things? It's comfortable. It's what they know. It's familiar. They don't have an example, right, that points to a destination. And Moses said, "Okay, we're leaving." Right? And we now can look back. We've got this wonderful book that we tote around with us, right? That tells us almost everything we need to know. How about this? It's a pattern that exposes and challenges held beliefs. Oh boy, challenges held beliefs, right? We all got things that we believe, whether they're true or not, we still believe them. Sometimes we believe the lie, about us, about God, about call of God on our life, what we're supposed to be doing, where we're supposed to be, things that are going on. Right? We have a pattern of belief. And that pattern of belief, as we've talked about, has been informed by your information, the things, your information package, whatever that is, whatever you've grown up in, whatever you've assimilated, the books you've read, the tapes you've listened to, the places you've been, the churches you've been in, the people you've sat under, that information pack. And not only that, not only the spiritual side of it, there's also in that information a lot of just knowledge that you have acquired about stuff, right? How to cook, how to plant, how to cut grass, right? All of these things that make up this information package. All of that information creates a belief system. There's a belief system that has been created out of all the assimilation of the information that you've got. Whatever it is. It's there. You know it's there. And all of that information has created a belief system that has perpetuated in your life action, habit, stronghold. Whatever it is. Right? Whatever's going on. And so we've talked about how many times have we talked about, right? Change perception. We got to change our information, change our experience, right? And so all of this information has created an experience. You've lived on this earth for 60 years. You've got 60 years of experience. All of that experience, all of it, every single bit of it is informed by your information. Every bit of it. Everything. Everything is informed by your information. All of your experience. Every bit of it. You don't like your experience, you don't like where you are. You got to change our information. And sometimes changing that information is difficult, right? Because we've held on to these beliefs for so long, they've become our golden calf, right? And we've held on to that golden calf for so long, it's really difficult to let go of the calf. And because of that, you've got this experience that has been created out of all of this information. You're focused on all of this experience. It's no wonder you can't hear him. It's no wonder you can't see faith. It's no wonder you can't get out of the circumstances that you're in. It's no wonder you're not fulfilling the call of God on your life, right? And in the midst of all that, what we want to do is, well, it's New Day. If I go 4 miles down the road to the other day church, it's all going to be better, right? And so we leave to the other day church, right? And guess what? Nothing changed. Did your information change? Did your experience change? So you took all of that to the other day church. And guess what? You're going to be in the same situation you were at New Day at the other day church. Because nothing's changed. Because you're there. Ring the bell. I mean, that's what's going on, right? And so we get frustrated. We get frustrated where we are. We don't like where we are. We don't like what's going on. We don't like all of this stuff. We focus on it. We focus on it. We're becoming it. We're vocabularying it. The narrative of our mouth, we're sowing seed into it. And it just compounds. Our experience just compounds. It's compounded. It's compounded. Gotta change our information. Get out of this place. You gotta shift. And that's what the culture of the kingdom is all about. It's all flipping the narrative is all about. That's what this whole thing is. I mean, so flip the narrative. So the Romans come to get Messiah. What does Pete do? Who grabs what? The sword?
Cuts off his ear.
And Jesus looks at him and says, "What did you just do?" I mean, imagine this scene now. I mean, Pete, man, bless Pete, right? Yeah. But imagine this scene. Imagine what's going on now. Remember, he's told them everything that's going to happen. How about this? He looked at Lazarus, kissed him on the cheek, and said, "Go do what you must do." The kingdom is, this whole thing is so different. And then he looks at Pete and he says, "Pete, why did you do that? If you're going to live by the sword, you're dying by the sword." Then he healed the guy. He picked his ear up, healed him. In the midst of this incredible scene that's going on where he's being betrayed and the Romans have come to get him and towed him away, here's this exchange with Pete and Lazarus. Not Lazarus. Judas. Sorry. Judas. With Pete and Judas. Right? And think about everything that's going on in the midst of this. Judas, the time has come. He kisses him. Now go do what you need to do. And I'm punching him out. Now, I'm tying him up, putting duct tape on his mouth, right? I'm zip tying him. I'm throwing him in the well, right? I mean, can you imagine this? And then they come, Pete focused, Pete trying to take matters into his own hand. He did this once before. He got called Satan, and here he is again trying to do the same thing, and he's rebuked. He said, "Hey, look, you want to live like this? You're going to die like this." And then he heals the guy, puts his ear back, boop, and he's let off. What was Pete thinking? Pete's holding the sword, got blood on it. Did he drop the sword? I mean, what did Pete do at that moment, right? I can't imagine what was going on in his soul at that moment. These are tough questions that we have to ask. If that question is not asked of Pete, does he write 1st and 2nd Peter? I doubt it, seriously. Right? The fulfillment of the call of God in Peter's life has all of these lessons in the Gospels, and they were tough lessons. Pete, you're going to deny me. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. I am not. No, you're going to do it 3 times. I mean, can you imagine? And it happens, and he realizes it. No, I'll never deny you. No, never, ever. I don't know who he is. No, I'm not one of them. No, I'm not from Nazareth. These moments of change and transition, I'm telling you guys, follow being asked the hard question. Sometimes the question sucks. It's tough. It's not easy. It's hard. But transition comes at the end of the hard question. Who's going to ask the hard question? Or who's going to do that? Who's going to ask those questions? Who's going to bring you to a place where you're challenged every day to live your life differently? Hey, good morning, guys. Thought for the day.
Your spirit has to do that for the rest of you.
Is that what you're going to do? Just let your spirit man do that?
Ask yourself the hard questions.
Good luck with that. How's that worked out? Sometimes it takes a person standing in front of you saying, Cindy, why are you doing this? Because what happens is if we just want to say, well, I'm going to ask myself the hard question, we don't ask it. And if we do, we don't follow through with that. There's no accountability to that. Where's the accountability?
How hard it's going to be.
That's right. Exactly.
We control it.
Right, and it's I'm telling you, so here's Jesus saying, come follow me. We see that again in Paul. Paul tells everybody, come follow me as I follow Christ. Right? But now we got a benchmark. We got Christ as our benchmark. I mean, think about what Paul is saying to you, Terry. He's saying, look, you come follow me. I've got my benchmark. This is what we're trying to become. Have you ever thought about it that way? See, we just say we're following Paul, don't we? And I mean, right? I mean, back 10 years ago, you thought you were following Paul. I mean, come on, be real. I mean, stop it, right? Now today, I get it. Yeah, okay, we get this now. We got the benchmark. You know, Paul's trying to be this, and he's saying, "Come follow me as I become this." But we get that now. But 5 years ago, we didn't get that. We didn't understand that 10 years ago, right? We just thought we were going to read the Paulinian letters, and we were going to become like Paul. Well, all Paul was doing was pointing to him. And say, look, the focus and point of all of my letters is so you become more like him, not like me. There's the shift. That's the kingdom shift, right? And so we've got to see that. So we've got to embrace and look, learn through the ordeal of patience. Man, we want microwave 1. Bing! Done! Woo! And baked potatoes today, I tell you, I love baked potatoes. I can remember the day you'd wrap your baked potato in foil and put it in the oven. Right? You turn the oven up on 450 and you put it in the oven and you get your baked potato stay in the oven for 30 hours, it seemed like. I mean, you had to start baking the potato at 9 o'clock in the morning to have it at lunch, right?
Guess what? I got a treat for you guys. I put potatoes in at 6.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, it's like,
After church, we can have
It's
them.
crazy, right? Yeah, now today, I mean, my wife said to teach me how to do it. 2 baked potatoes in the microwave. They got a baked potato button on the microwave. You hit it twice, ding! 7 minutes, boom! Hey, 7 minutes, you got your baked potato. But I could be fixing my salad and have my baked potato all at the same time. I didn't put it in at 6 o'clock in the morning.
But it tastes better when you put it in.
It really does. Right? It really does. That's the point, right? We don't understand the ordeal of patience. Let patience have that. Man, now I want it now. No, you can't have it now. You gotta grow a little bit. You gotta mature a little bit. We gotta go through a little bit of a process. Now I wanna be Paul now. I want the life hack, the shortcut, right? Hey, give me the shortcut. And really, that's what the boys were asking Jesus. They wanted the life hack. They wanted the shortcut. Hey, look, we've seen you do all these. Look, this isn't in the narrative, but I'm telling you, this is what was going on. Read it. Look at it, right? They approach him. I think Pete was the one that asked the question. I think they purposely, when they drew lots, Pete always got the short straw. I think that was on purpose. The boys rigged the system for Pete. I think sometimes. Bless his heart. Right? And so they'd seen Messiah do all these things, these wonderful things. Right? And they knew that he kind of disappeared and he came back and all this stuff happened. Right? And he would tell them, I'm going to pray. Right? And he'd go away, kind of, man, great things would happen. And so the boys approached Messiah. Why? First of all, why did they approach Messiah to ask the question? Let's start there. Why did they approach Messiah to ask the question? Because they wanted to do the things. Come on.
They wanted to do what he was doing.
Exactly. Come on. Be smart now. Come on. And so they approached him because they wanted to do the things. And so they figured he had a shortcut. He had something in there that he was doing when he went away, and they wanted to know what it was because they figured if they could do what he was doing when he went away, that they could do exactly what he was doing. Right? That's the whole purpose of that. Yes, ma'am.
So when he left, did Jesus change, or was he perfect? So, like, you go and then he's not resisting change.
Correct.
Towards the Father. And so he
Correct.
had circumstance go on, he removed himself.
Yeah.
He didn't put it in the knowledge of good and evil. He didn't say that's a bad situation, that's a good situation.
Correct.
So he'd removed, but then that makes us picture that Jesus was changing towards the Father. And
does not the narrative say that he grew in stature before God and man?
So now I picture him going away and allowing that uncomfortable and patience and enduring it without and changing himself towards God, and then coming back into the situation changed.
Yes.
And never changing the situation.
Absolutely.
But they never wanted to do that.
Correct.
And so they
You can
just
ring the bell. You
wanted
know that.
him to give the anointing
Yes,
right then
absolutely.
after he suffered
Yes.
all that stuff.
Exactly.
Whatever.
And so I mean, so let's look at the time when he went into the desert and fasted 40 days and 40 nights. I love the narrative that says that he was hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, he was as much man as you and I. Yes, he was God and the Son of God, but
he was allowing change.
Yes, he was. That's why I think the narrative says that he changed. He grew in stature before God and man.
If he wasn't, then this whole thing's bogus.
Exactly.
Because then why am I following him?
Exactly. I quit.
He had, like, one of the things that helps me is picture when I get upset with some people, is watching, thinking of him in the garden.
Mm-hmm.
And Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. Then he turns around to see what they're doing. If he didn't think or say, you want me to die for them?
Exactly.
They don't even care about
That's
me.
right.
Then I can't relate to him.
I'm with you.
You know?
And I think, Maggie, what's interesting about that concept is, I mean, what did he say to the boys? Is it,
Can't stay awake.
yes, you're spot on. Mm-hmm. I can relate to that. I can relate to him allowing, not change, look, the circumstance with the circumstance.
But he's our model.
Yes.
That's what we have to remember. He wasn't this perfect person going through life. I believe he learned everything just like we're learning.
Just like we're learning.
I was going to say he was a man, but he was all about the Father's will. So every time he went away, he came back with the Father's will forefront, and he had to do whatever the Father told him.
Absolutely.
And
that's what he said, did he
yeah.
not? And think about the responsibility Joseph had in teaching and training him. It's amazing to me, right? So we look at this ordeal of patience, wanting everything immediately. Man, we want instant everything. Instant oatmeal, instant gratification, baked potatoes in 7 minutes, right? I mean, frozen dinners, throw them in the microwave, bing, we eat. You know, we eat meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green peas in 5 minutes. You know, instead of taking the time to make the meatloaf and let the peas cook, and right. When we do mashed potatoes at our house, they have to be real. My wife she can spot a fake mashed potato
No doubt.
from 100 miles away.
Yeah.
I mean, she can. And so when we do mashed potatoes at our house, I mean, it's the whole bag. We peel them, we wash them, I chop them up, we boil them, and we don't even use a hand mixer. You know,
Potato masher.
you know, and those are real mashed potatoes, right? They taste so much better than the artificial mashed potatoes. But you can buy a box of artificial mashed potatoes, throw a little water in it, put it in the microwave, bing, you got mashed potatoes. This,
You don't.
this. See, but that's what we want out of this Christian walk that we're in. And so the boys came to Jesus and said, "Man, we want shortcut, right? We want you to tell us how you're doing this by doing this." Did Jesus ever answer that question? Did he ever answer the question? No, he didn't. He never answered their question. What he did was he turned them completely upside down and said, "You really want to know why I'm doing this?" Right? Because he did know their thoughts, right? So, you really want to know why I'm doing this? Well, he's your dad too. And the reason I do what I do is because he's my dad. End of story. That whole Lord's Prayer that we love to call it's a prophetic declaration. If you look at it as a prophetic declaration and declare it over your life, it will change and transform your life. Instead of, it's a nice little prayer. He told them, the reason I do what I do is because of my dad. And he's holy, and he's in heaven, and he's your dad as well. Now, talk about a hard saying. These guys, growing up in a traditional Jewish household, could not fathom that. What got Jesus killed in the gospel? If you've seen me, you've seen God.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And they ripped their clothes, and, right? We understand that there is an acceleration. I get that. Things can happen. But I also know that a day is 1,000 years and 1,000 years is a day. There is a process to all of this. The challenge is embracing the process. We don't want to embrace the process. The process of change, the process of transformation takes time. I got a funny text message. We're getting ready to get on a meeting today. One of my most favorite of all meetings. That is sarcastic, by the way.
Very.
And I get this text message because I had received a call right as I was getting on the meeting, and so I'm trying to figure out who called me. And so I had sent a text message to an individual I thought who called me, and I said, "Hey, did you call me? I'm sorry, I was getting on this meeting." "No, it wasn't me." Was it somebody else?" I said, "No, it started there first, came back to you." "Well, maybe it was the corner office. They're getting ready to call you up to the big leagues." I said, "Oh, no, I'm not good enough for that." And his response back to me was, "Well, no, age has its privilege." Right? And I get that. I get the maturity of age, right?
Yeah.
The maturity of age, right? The maturity of going through the process, the maturity of patience, right? And so we want things so fast, handed to us. Now look, you might be 22 years old on Facebook, and you may truly be called to be an apostle. But at 22 years old, you're not the apostle, prophet, teacher of the nations. I'm sorry. Now you may be, it may be happening. But listen, I was running around all over the East Coast on an apostolic team too. And I got news for you. What I was doing on the apostolic team when I was 22, 25 years old Had nothing to do with what I'm doing today. It's not even close, right? And so we've got to understand this process. And we want things so fast. We want the end now. And does not the book of Proverbs say that wealth given early is wasted? Right? Isn't that what it says? Man, that's a hard saying. I want my inheritance now. But wait a minute.
That's the inheritance of the shortcut.
Exactly. Right? And so we got to see how. You have something to say? We got to see how that. So look, let's look at Jimmy. Here's the secret. I love the way the Mirror translation starts out. Here's the secret. Here's the shortcut. You want the shortcut? Here's the shortcut. Joy is not something you have to fake. It's the fruit of what your faith knows to be true about you. We just stop there and just fall down in the fetal position on the ground and go, okay, right? It gets better. You know that the proof of your faith results in persuasion that remains constant in what? The contradiction. Right? Isn't that really what the kingdom and the world are? A contradiction, one to another?
That's what I keep seeing is when you're talking about compounding over here and over here, I see that person is creating so much evidence for all these things, and then faith requires that you let that evidence go, and faith for something else that also has evidence, but it's just, and now it's just like starting to go all in this.
Bring them back. Right? And so steadfastness is another thing. And not only do we not understand patience, we don't understand steadfastness. I mean, doing something every day for 30 days. Try.
That's how you build the evidence that you can do those tasks or those perfect work. You can't gain that evidence if you don't steadfast in the contradiction
and do the work.
Through it.
Exactly right. Do the work. And so, I've asked these guys, here's what we're going to do for 30 days. And here's how we're going to do it. And here's what I expect of you in the next 30 days. And it's interesting, isn't it? We were talking about that, how easy you get accustomed to not doing things, right? And then all of a sudden you're called to task, right? So, listen, all I've asked them to do is read one sentence. One sentence. It's a sentence that might have 12 words in it. I didn't ask them to read a book. I didn't ask them to read the Gospel of John. I didn't ask them to read a novel. One sentence with 12 words in it. I want you to read this sentence every day for the next 30 days. Every day. The same sentence. Why are you asking them to do this? Well, you've lost. If you're asking me why I'm asking you to read the same sentence for 30 days, you've already lost. You're already in the ditch, right? I want you to read this for the next 30 days, and then I want you to spend 5 minutes. 5 minutes. You got 24 hours in a day. 5 minutes. Can you give me 5 minutes? I want you to think about that sentence you just read. And then I want you to write something about that sentence as you wait and meditate on the Lord. I want you to write it down. I want you to keep a journal. Once you've completed that task, once you've done that, you've read the sentence, 5 minutes, prayer, meditation, written your entry down, I want you to, on the text machine, send me a green check. That's it. We're going to do that for every day for the next 30 days. How do you build steadfastness? How do you build persistence? How do you build habit? How do you start this process? Right? You eat the elephant one bite at a time. Right? And so, I get up, I open the day up, I say, gentlemen, good morning, day 8's on the clock. Hey, look, you got 24 hours. You do it any time during the day you want to. You don't have to do it at 5 o'clock. You don't have to do it when I open the day up and say good morning, day 8's on the clock. And you can do it at 11:58 for all I care. It's just that within that 24-hour period, you need to do these 3 tasks and leave me a green check. That's all I'm asking. That's all it is. Is it easy?
Depends on what time of day you do it.
Exactly, right? Depends on when you do it, allocating the time, time slips by, before you know it. And so last night I sent a little reminder, hey, gentlemen, when you complete your task, don't forget the green check. And all of a sudden I got these green checks, right? You don't understand the difficulty and the challenge of persistent patience and steadfastness until you're asked to do something every day for 30 days. The same thing. This isn't a menu. This isn't a buffet. It's the same thing repeatedly for 30 days. The same exact thing. Can you get to the end, David?
It's almost like David, when Samuel came to him and they anointed him, he was a little boy and he knew he was going to be king, and then all of a sudden he's thrust into the kingdom. He's following him around, he's playing the harp, he's seeing what Saul's doing and knowing that he's really the rightful king, and how long he had to wait around and be patient, be steadfast, even though he knew he was anointed the king.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm. So good morning, gentlemen. Day 8's now on the clock. Stay the course. Be uncommon. Always forward. Day goes on for a little bit. 11:15. Gentlemen, thought for the day. It all begins and ends in your mind. What you give power to has power over you, if allowed. Remember, the narrative in your mind eventually becomes the vocabulary of your voice. We always reap the harvest of our words. A couple little hearts. I love my guys. They got this little heart thing going. I love it.
I don't know how to do that.
I'll show you.
So then I get a response from one of the guys. Determine the seed, because the seed contains the DNA,
Yep.
which determines the harvest. You get an amen behind that one. Bunch of little hearts. Then I get this. 5:11. Here we go again. I get, shoot! It all begins and ends in my own mind. I feel like every time I spend time to take inventory of my thoughts and thought process throughout the day, it needs recalibrating. It feels like a nonstop process, constantly changing the narrative from the lesser to the greater, pausing to see the sea. Yeah, very good. Last night, last of the day, I said, I encourage everyone to read Sam's post above. Closing thought for the day. Awareness doesn't stop you from making mistakes. It allows you to learn from them. The fear of making mistakes paralyzes us and halts our forward progress. Maturity and forward progress are linked. Rest well in Him. Be uncommon. Always forward. Little things in our life add up to become really big things. Little things. And it is, steadfastness provides you with a constant environment, a consistent environment. And so patience prevails. Why does patience prevail? Because you're steadfast and you're in a consistent environment. You're doing the same things over and over and over and over and over and over.
We had an instructor in nursing school, Miss Peach,
Oh, Lord.
and she taught fundamentals, and she was older, she'd never been married. That was Miss Peach. These little tiny things, and she would follow your butt for 30 days, whichever group you were in. And I mean, it was in those days, at that point when you made the bed, she'd go in and flip a quarter on it like you were in the army.
It better bounce.
But it was like, you never forgot those things,
Uh-huh.
no matter what we learned. And when we got out of school, no matter where we went for a job, we didn't even have to interview because they know where we went to school. They know how we stuck to things.
Come
I
on.
don't know why they did carry on to the rest of my life.
I thought you were saying, and it was Mr. Peabody. I was ready for Mr. Peabody, right? But you see what happens? The consistent environment, patience prevails and provides your perfection. The perfection comes from steadfastness, from the persuasion that remains constant in contradiction, from this consistent environment. Patience prevails. All of that stuff is what happens. How entirely whole you are and without any shortfall. How do you get there? See, we want this. We want what comes after the semicolon. We want that. But we're not willing to pay the price of persuasion that remains constant in contradiction, steadfastness, a consistent environment, patience that prevails, proves our perfection. That's where all of that comes from. That's not easy to do. I mean, it's not easy to do these things. Routine gets in the way. Our day, as Terry said, it depends on what time of day, right? It's sometimes the day gets away from you. You got to do it, right? And you're probably sitting in the back of your mind going, man, he's going to send out a note. I hadn't sent my check in, right? And that accountability is a good thing sometimes. Sometimes that accountability really becomes important.
It's not just a practice of not changing your circumstances. You're just always the same, but I mean, that's the practice.
That's the practice. Your theory then has to become practice, right? Eventually, your theology has got to become practice, whatever it is. Right? And let's go back. Information and experience. What's happened is the information and experience that shades your theology, whatever it is, has created your lifetime of experience that has created these habits, these belief systems, all of this stuff that you do every day. I tell you what, the boys had their habits, right? Pete was a tough old cuss, and they were fishermen. They had jobs, they had lives, they had things they were doing, and they dropped everything to follow this person. And not only did they follow that person, they embraced. And listen, the narrative doesn't. I imagine there were times when Messiah went to sleep that these boys were like going, man, this guy, I got to tell you, there might come a time I'm gonna hit him, right? I mean, it wasn't a pleasant moment. There was a lot of fun stuff too. I believe that. I believe there were a lot of moments of great joy. There were a lot of moments of incredible miracles and things that were. But there were also these moments that were really difficult, very difficult. Right? Are you going to leave too, Terry? Are you going to bail? I mean, what are you going to do, right? If you love me, feed my sheep. Well, why are you asking me that question 3 times? Right? Of course I love you. You're going to deny me. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. Not only are you going to deny me, you're going to do it 3 times. No, I'll never deny you ever. I'll die with you. Blah, blah. No, I'm not with him. No, I'm not with him. No, I'm not a Nazarite. No. I don't know what you're talking about. Aren't you one of them? No. How about this in the Passion Translation? For we know that when your faith is tested, it stirs up power within you to, I think here's another, we don't like that word either. All things. All things. To endure. Stick it out. And then the book of Proverbs say that when the test comes and you freak out, your faith wasn't very strong in the first place. You know what it says? And can you imagine that? I mean, sometimes I read the book of Proverbs and that's like Messiah asking me these tough questions. man, if this happens and you freak out, man, your faith wasn't very good to begin with. I go, oh, yeah, I need to re-examine my faith, right? I mean, it really calls things into question, right? Hey, you know, you're walking down the street, you see a hole, what are you going to do? You're going to keep walking and fall in the hole? You're going to, well, wait a minute, I always go this way. Why are you, I got to go all the way, you make it. No, I'm going this way and you fall in the hole. We don't like inconvenience. We don't like getting kicked out of our routine. We don't like these things, right? We just don't. Because we like our routine. We like where we are. We like status quo. Don't mess up my status quo. Don't ask me to do something that I hadn't planned for in that day. You know how you really test where you are is when you've got your whole day planned out and somebody says, hey Maggie, I really need something. Can you do this for me today? And you're like, and internally the dialogue is, don't you, it's my only day off of the week. And you're asking, I had these things planned out, right? I mean, this internal dialogue kicks off, doesn't it? Why? Because we're inconvenienced. I see the hole, but I'm going to keep walking. Even though I might fall in the hole, I'm going to keep going straight. Hey, see that woman? Don't go near her. What, that woman over there? These things in the book of Proverbs, the book of Ecclesiastes, and the book of Job, and the Gospels. And read Jude, for heaven's sakes. And you want to get turned upside down? Read Jude. When was the last time you read the book of Jude? I'm sure it wasn't yesterday. Probably wasn't last month either.
It's easy for me.
Right?
It's my son's name.
So it says, and then as you're in, wait a minute. No, I don't like this word to begin with, but now you're telling me that it's got to grow. Your endurance comes in a measure, and your endurance grows. There's this incredible book that was written by a Navy SEAL. You Can't Hurt Me. And the story in this book it's incredible. And just the challenge that this individual went through as a child, as a teenager, sitting there as a bug man. I love the story when he finally decided he was going to become a Navy SEAL. He was an exterminator, and he was eating McDonald's, and he weighed 280 pounds, and he was an exterminator, and he's sitting in his car one day eating his Big Mac, and he decided he's going to become a Navy SEAL. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm sitting in the car as a bug man eating Big Mac and I weigh 280 pounds, I'm not thinking about becoming a Navy SEAL. I mean, I'm just not. And he had that thought, and then the whole process, he goes into the recruiter. I can see the recruiter now. He walks in, says, I want to be a Navy SEAL. I can see the recruiter looking at him going, yeah, bet you do. Well, you do realize there's a pre-qualification test. You just don't walk into the recruiter station and go, I want to be a SEAL. And they go, okay, come on in. There's a pre-qual test. And so the guy handed in the pre-qual and said, okay, when you can do all this, we'll talk about it. You know what was the purpose of that?
Show him away. He wasn't going to do it.
Exactly. And he did it. He endured. And his endurance grew. He was steadfast. He pressed forward. Right? And he comes back to the recruiter and says, hey, I did it. And he takes the pre-qual test. He qualifies. Joins Navy SEALs. And he gets into Hell Week 3 or 4 times. He gets hurt. He has to rotate back. Now, I don't know about you, but when you're in the middle of Hell Week and you get hurt, and he got pneumonia one time, and he hurt his leg or something, I don't know, a bunch of setbacks. You've gone through that first rotation, and you're in Hell Week, because that's the end of it. That's the end of the first rotation. And you get pushed back to the next class. don't know if I'm doing that again, right? And he did it 4 times, finally before he qualified.
Never fail.
So he qualified, and then he gets the bright idea he wants to become a ranger too. And so he wants the ranger tab. And it took him about 3 times to get the ranger tab. And so when he was stationed out in California. He just decided that, you know, part of what happened to him, he had a heart condition, and he said, you know what, this is not going to keep me from doing what I want to do. So he starts running. And he ends up becoming an ultramarathon. And the dude's running like 120 miles a day. He'd run to work in the mornings, and you know, he'd run with a pack on, carrying his gear. And he'd run to work, and then he'd run at lunch, and then he'd run home, and then he'd eat dinner, and he'd run again. I mean, this is an incredible, it's a story about persevering. Can you press through the discomfort of the process? Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it sucks. Sometimes it's not fun. Sometimes it's just, right? I mean, I've heard guys in the gym, in the weight room, you know, the day you need to lift is the day you don't want to. Right? When you get that, I don't want to do this, go. Because if you lay down and say, I don't want to do this, and stop, that's the start of a habit. That's the start of a habit. And we do that with all kinds of, we let the world get in the way of our habits with the kingdom. So what Paul says, don't be conformed to this world, but you be transformed. How? By renewing the way you think, your mind, right? The way you think, with what? The Word. Word of God. Right? And so, you know, this it's not like it's not a hobby. This isn't, it's not a suggestion. It's not like, well, you know, man, you do if you want to. But you know, you'll change and grow and transform and all of it. You know, you don't really have to do all this stuff if you don't want to. I mean, that's a lie. I mean, that's not going to happen. And being in the Word, being an acuity of awareness, being in prayer, you know, worshiping, all of these things that we have, you know, we think we can't do during the course of the day because I'm busy. I work. Well, good. You're supposed to. Book of Proverbs says, if you don't work, you don't eat. That's what it says, right? I mean, if you don't work, you don't eat, right? So I work. I've got an hour commute. You don't know the people I work with. My job is really hard, and when I come home, I'm really tired. And so my wife, we got these little goofy Apple Watches, and I've told you this a bunch of times. I keep trying to beat her in steps in the day. It's impossible. I cannot do it. I can't beat her. I don't care what I do. I can go to the gym, work out, train, cut the grass, sweep. And I come in, I sit down, and I think, I got her today. I got her. And I'll do one of these things. Hey, I got 12,850 steps today. I got you. I got you. And she'll sit there for a minute or two, and then this is all she does. She'll go like that. She'll click her watch and she'll go like that. Oh, you got to be kidding me! That's impossible, right? You can't have that many steps in the day, right? Sometimes that's right. I'm sure it's the chipmunk. You somehow you've trained the chipmunk. That's exactly right. You've trained the chipmunk and you tie it around his neck, and there's a chipmunk. Do you see the point Jimmy's making here? There's a steadfastness, there's an endurance, there's a training, there's an incremental transformation and growth. It's the little bitty things. I tell Dawson, I tell the kids all the time, especially when Logan was sitting there, when Denise was tutoring Logan, I pay attention to the detail, pay attention to the detail, pay attention to the detail. You got to pay attention to the details of life, to the details of what the Word of God is saying to you. Right? We end up, because we're over here focused on these things, we're trying to look at the world to fix everything, or we try to fix it. when all Holy Spirit wants is for us to fix us? How about you work on you? Right? You work on you, and this, whatever this is, this may never change. I don't know. It may never change. I don't know the answer to that question. But I do know the answer that if you change, you're gonna get better and not bitter. You're gonna change. You're gonna be different.
But if you change, it doesn't matter whether other people do or don't.
Amen.
Ring that bell. Right? It doesn't matter.
Christy.
Right? It just doesn't matter. So delay is part of the journey, and the key is how you manage the way. How do you manage the way? So you got to promise it's a seed, right? Your promise is a seed too, and you got to put the promise in the ground, don't you? Unless a grain of wheat falls in the ground, there's no harvest, right? But that scripture got this little bitty thing in the middle of that, right? Unless a grain of wheat falls in the ground and whoo. So you got to take your promise and throw it in the ground so it dies. How are you going to handle the moment of death, the period of death? How do you handle that? Not only how do you handle it, then it's got to germinate, right? So there's a period of dying, death, and germination. What do you do in that period of time? How do you handle that period, right? You want the harvest, right? I don't think there's a microwave for harvest. I don't think you throw the seed in the ground and hit baked potato twice and you got a harvest, right? I don't think that's the way that works, right? So you put the seed in the ground, it's got to die. It goes through this process of death, and then it germinates. Life comes into the seed. And this whole process of going to the harvest, reaping the harvest will depend on how you manage the delay of the germination. What do you do in that period of time? Can you be steadfast? Can you endure? Can you just keep pressing forward? Are you going to say, oh, it's dead, and walk away and do something different? Well, it's not going to work. It's isn't going to grow. Right? Where's your promise? Well, it's right there. You put it in the ground. You want the harvest of your promise.
That's usually when the Lord says to me, okay, my little Israelite.
Yeah.
Then it's like, gets my attention.
Right, Dave? You just had revelation. I saw it come.
So, when you think about a seed falling to the ground, the germination period happening, and through that, the germination happens quicker if it has all the right elements. It has enough sun, enough water, fertilizer. And through that period, the Lord said, you need to be taking care of that. You need to be tending to your garden. So the seed fulfills everything that I needed to fulfill.
Bingo. Exactly right. Right? I mean, that's exactly right. And so the part of this we don't like in the delay, right? We put the seed in the ground and we want the microwave button for harvest, right? Somewhere in my microwave, I know there's a harvest button, right? And it happens, right? But we've got to take care of the seed now. We got to water it, we got to fertilize it, we got to make sure it gets the right sun, we got to weed it and all this other stuff. We got to take care of that seed. We don't see anything in the seed yet, right? The harvest, we may plant the seed in February, March. Harvest comes in October. I mean, that's a long time, right? So don't wait for the world to change. Kill the serpent. Just stop. Just kill the serpent. I mean, we want everything to change. No, let's just kill the serpent. Be done with it. See, when you can master you, when you can kill the serpent in you, when you can get that done, it doesn't matter what goes on around you. See, we're so concerned about everything that's going on around us. Boys in the boat, storm comes up, Jesus is asleep. They're scared out of their brain. We're going to die, we're going to die. I mean, this guy's been on that lake numerous times, and probably in the same boat they were in numerous times. Right? They've seen storms. They've navigated through this before. Right? And here they are, all of them, all grown men, sitting on this boat, screaming and hollering, we're going to die. Storm comes up. Where is he? Where is he? And they're looking to him to rescue, right? Wait, he's asleep. We're going to wake him up. I think Pete had to go wake him up. And look, I know the narrative is clear. It says that he woke up and he said stop, and it stopped. Listen, there's more humanity to this story than we want to. I think he woke up really groggy, like what? I think he was asleep. I think he was sleeping. And I don't know, when you wake me up out of a deep sleep, I'm not really ready to go till a couple minutes. Takes a little while to shake it off, right? And I believe he was like, what are y'all, what is going on? The storm, don't you see the storm? He kind of looked around and was like, okay, can I go back to bed now? You gotta do something about it, please, or we're gonna die. And he goes, stop. And he goes back and lays down. And what did the boys say when he went back and laid down to sleep? What did they say about it? What manner? Who is this guy that even the wind and water obey? I love that story.
You know what's surprising about that to me is these people were fishermen.
Yeah.
So they've been on a boat in a storm before.
Absolutely. They've been there before, right? It's like nothing
Wasn't a new experience.
Yeah, exactly. So great change comes when we make small adjustments with great conviction. Listen, we kind of want to go do the super makeup, right? The glamour shot. We want the glamour shot. That's what we want. We want the quick super makeover glamour shot. But you guys do realize when you come out of the glamour shot, that doesn't last but maybe a couple hours. You got the picture to look at, but you in the glamour shot, that's not really who you are. You faked the glamour shot, right? I mean, we've got to understand that these small adjustments, this change, it's the little things. But can you do these little things with really great conviction? You see, because I'm telling you, persistence and steadfastness and being steadfast in contradiction, all of these things, all of it requires great conviction in those little things.
But I can't do that if I don't love me. But I also have to do that to love me.
Yes. And to love him, right?
Right.
But if you don't love you, you don't love him.
Right.
The cycle's back to those two questions always. And it always comes back to those two questions, right? So, confronting our current reality requires discipline and courage, right? Discipline and courage. Courage is not the absence of fear, right? Fear exists. Fear is there. Now, I got to tell you, David went running out that first time. I'm sure he stopped and went, okay. Wow. He had to deal with that, right? And it took great discipline to stand there, right? I mean, he was what, 13? Maybe 14? It could have been 12. I mean, there's some commentaries say it was 12. I look at Dawson. Dawson's 10. Right? 2 years from now, Dawson will be 12. I look at him, and I think about him walking out in the middle of two opposing armies with this huge, big, giant guy, and going, I can take you. I'm like, okay. Right? And the narrative is there. We read the narrative, but I want you to begin to read the narrative and put the emotion of what's going on in the narrative there. Stop reading it in one dimension. I mean, we know what David did. We know, this Philistine, blah, blah, blah. And look, I know when he went out there, yes, he had the experience of the lion and the bear. Yes, he knew who his God was. Yes, he'd been anointed. Yes. But the moment he stepped out there on the playing field, there was that one moment where he had to deal with fear. Mm-hmm. We all have to deal with that. There's always going to be that moment where you've got to deal with fear. What do? It takes great courage and discipline It took a lot of discipline for him to stand there and say, all right, I got this. I know the bear, I know the lion, I know who my God is, I got this, okay. I can press through, I'm not gonna let this fear stop me. I've already committed, right? I've already said I can get him, I whoop him, right? And you step out there and it's like, I've already committed, right? And fear comes. Fear of failure, right? The fear of not succeeding, the fear of the moment, the fear of the challenge. All of that keeps us from moving forward, right? All of that stops us. Goliath is standing there, right? We see it, and we know that we know. And yet we stop and we look at that, and there's this moment where we've got to deal with fear. We have got to deal with that, and the only way you do that is through discipline. The discipline of what? The small things that you've been doing for the last 30 days. Right? These small incremental changes. Because then you get there and you go, fear's there, and you go, no, I know what this is about. I'm not going to let this override. So you're not going to be Spock, guys. Come on. You're constantly going to have to deal with these emotions. They're there. They're real. They're going to be there all the time. How do you handle that? You're going to handle that with discipline and courage. Where does the discipline come from? The discipline comes from the fact that you've been doing something over and over and over for the last 30 days or 30 years. Right? And I've read so many stories about the raid on Osama bin Laden's compound. And what impresses me, and they succeeded, right? We know the end of the story. But what we don't understand is that they took satellite imagery and they reconstructed that compound out in the middle of nowhere. And they practiced that raid over and over and over and over and over and over before they went. They knew where the doors were, they knew where the turns were, they knew where everybody was going to be. So when they hit the ground, it was just second nature. Can walking in the kingdom become second nature to you? Can you become so familiar with the kingdom of God, you're so prepared, you're so trained, you've worked on this so much, that when you're in a position where there is a battle, you know exactly what to do. So the paradox is you got to find a way to maintain hope and trust at the same time. That's hard to do. All right, what is hope? Right? What is hope? What is hope? What does Hebrews 11:1 say about hope? Faith is...
Substance of things hoped for, but I don't see it with my natural eyes.
There you go. So, can you maintain hope and trust at the same time? Boy, that's a mouthful, isn't it? Hope. Faith is, quote it again, Pastor.
Faith is the substance of things not seen.
The evidence.
Faith is the substance of things that I don't see, but I know that it's going to happen.
That's exactly right. Why do you know it's going to happen?
Because that's what the Word said.
Because you trust it. Right? You trust.
Yes.
And so you can, hope deferred does what? Makes the heart sick. Right? And so in the midst of it, in the midst of what's going on, are you listening with your eyes? What are you doing? As you listen with your eyes, that erodes hope. Not only does it erode hope, it erodes trust. So trust is only built through relationship. So if you have no relationship, there's no trust. If there's no trust, there's no hope. And so you remain in the same place over and over and over.
You don't have hope that you can change.
That's correct.
You don't trust in the example.
Exactly right. So to endure, right? We talked about endurance. Jimmy laid the endurance test on us. Listen, just stop lying to yourself. Confront the most brutal facts of your current situation. Just confront them. Well, I don't know if I can do that. Okay, well, find somebody that will help you do it. And when they confront it and put it in front of you, don't get mad at it. Maybe for a second or two. It's okay. Right? But sometimes you got to confront the brutal truth. Sometimes you got to look in the mirror and go, man, I got to eat the frog first. Can you eat the frog first? Can you eat the toughest thing first? All right, so I've asked these guys, I said, one thing. Give me one thing. One thing. What is the one thing that keeps you from success? What is it? Don't give me a litany. Eat the frog. Confront these brutal things. I mean, just say, okay, this is what it is. Because if you can't confront it and confess your faults, your sins, confess them one to another that you may be healed. If you can't say this is it, and you can't look somebody in the eye and say I need help, this is it. Now you think you can do it by yourself. No man's an island. You think you do it in a vacuum. You can't. I'm telling you, you can't. If that worked, how's it working out for you? Okay? I mean, I'll just ask you the question. If you could do it by yourself, you could do it in a vacuum. And you know what these things are. If I ask you right now to write down that one thing, you could do it. If I ask you two things, one, write down the one thing you want. What is the one thing you want? What is it? And then what keeps you from it? You could do that right now. Possibly you've been asking yourself those two questions for quite a long time. Here's the promise. Here's what I want. Here's what I know. But I know this is why I'm not walking in the fullness of that. You're asking yourself those questions all the time. And because you're trying to do it in a vacuum, nothing's changing. Why? Because you're not going to be brutal with yourself. You're just not. You're not going to do it. Now, there are some people that can. I get that. There are some exceptions to that rule. I understand.
But we're not made to do things by ourselves.
Never were. I mean, as a matter of fact, last time I checked, the plurality looked out of heaven after they created Adam and said, it's not good for him to be alone.
There's nobody there to ask him hard questions.
That's exactly right. My wife is good at asking me the hard questions. Right? I mean, it's just not. Right? And so.
Sometimes he gets mad.
I do. Yes.
Why do you have to ask me that right now?
That's right. You get over it, right? Right? And look, and you know, before you know it, everything that's happened is the right thing, right? You know it, and you're denying it, and you're ducking it, right? You're bobbing and weaving, and then boom! What? Stop it!
You know I've had a hard day.
That's right.
What in the world?
That's right. What are you talking about?
Now you've had a hard day.
That's right.
You haven't had a hard day yet, buddy.
That's right. You don't know the short end of it. See, we want the outcome, don't we? We want the outcome, but we don't want to pay the price of the process. See, to embrace the process, it's the one thing that brings transformation. It's tough. See, I personally believe, this is my personal editorial belief, that the reason we don't disciple anymore is because this is hard. This is hard stuff. See, we think we can read the book in a vacuum, right? And we're going to wake up tomorrow morning. Maybe we put it on our pillow and sleep on it too. You know? Or better yet, we got it on cassette and we put the things in our ears and we sleep with the Word of God just playing in our ear. And we just think we're going to wake up the next morning and everything's going to be fine. Everything will be different. What is in there to say? Iron does what?
Sharpen.
As
I'm sharpening this one.
one man sharpens another. Right? Yeah, see, it's all right there. It's all in the book. We just don't pay attention to it. We don't like being uncomfortable. We don't like discomfort. We don't like paying the price. We don't like change. We don't like embracing the process. We want everything now. We don't want to endure the ordeal of patience. All of these things. We just want somebody to walk up to us, as you said, Cindy, and just say, here it is, and bam, it's done. Presto change-up, deluxo. You're all new, right? And we know that happens here, right? I mean, we get this. We understand the transformation and all things are new. Now, as Paul said, right, after we step through this process, now it's, okay, now work your salvation out, thing. Work this thing out every day. Every day, work it out.
But in the presto change-up, living in that bubble, it only stays new if you live in that bubble by yourself. Because you come back out around people, it starts all over again.
Done it though, right? So in Colossians, and what further relevance there be for you to continue to live under the influence of mankind's doctrines and ideas? How? The how. So don't let man-made I don't know what that word is. The how cause you to major on minors. Who's got the Mirror translation? Look at that. What is that? What is that goofy word there? What did I do?
Menace?
Is that it?
Menus.
Menus? Is that what it is? Man-made menus. Thank you.
Were you thinking about getting something to eat?
I must have. It's all right. It's like observant, right? What's that word?
I'm like, honey, for real, you don't know what that word is?
Yeah, it's menus. Thank you.
You're stressing her out now.
Yeah, stressing me out.
Am I gonna sit you in the kitchen counter tomorrow?
Yeah, I think I need some remedial work, right? I need some vocabulary work. And don't let man-made menus, the how, cause you to major on minors. Religious tradition appears to be very devout, and its followers seem to be so humble and holy in the strict observance of the rules, how, to seek to control the behavior of the body. The only problem with this is the flesh is never permanently satisfied. How, right? But it's the why. So why do we do all of this? Well, I mean, what is the purpose of this? What is your why? Man, we can talk about how all day long. We can talk about the small incremental changes. We can talk about washing your mind in the Word of God. We can lay out a menu of things to do, right? But why? Why are you doing any of it? What is it just because it's the religious tradition that appears very devout and the followers seem to be so humble and holy in their strict observance of the rules? Is that what this is all about? Or is it really about becoming Christ-like? I mean, think about this prophetic, again, go back to the prophetic declarations. Messiah standing there in front of these Jewish men saying, hey, look, I want you to know, here is the key. Here is the why for how I do, right? My dad, your dad, my dad, he's in heaven and he's home. So we can talk all day long about all of these things, these hows, and they're important. The how is important. But the why has got to drive your how. It's got to. Because if not, the how just becomes a religious thing. It becomes a religious act, a religious practice. And that's never going to lead to the transformation. One, it's not going to lead you to Christ-likeness. Why? Because religion, what does religion do? Religion wants to take you away from Christ-likeness. Right? And so when we understand, when we read this scripture, and we understand, listen, we still have too much affection for our clay outer wrapper, sometimes we do, which forces us into polarity. Remember all the time we spend on polarity? And obscures the source of our origin. Up, down, right, wrong, judgment, knowledge of good and evil, yada, yada, polarity, right? I'm in, I'm out, it's good, it's bad, all these things. That's what polarity is. It's opposites, right? And listen, Messiah dealt with that. He said about the kingdom. What did he say about the kingdom? Let's talk about polarity. You want to talk about the polarity of the kingdom? The way up is
Down.
what? There you go. Now let's tackle polarity. To have,
Have not.
let go. To live,
To die.
man. I mean, let's deal with it, right? And what happens is when we're forced into polarity, when we're forced into he loves me not, it's good, it's bad, I make judgments, it's right, wrong, all of these things that we do, right? Then that obscures the source of our origin. What is the source? Is the source of our origin bad?
It's perfect.
It's perfect. Is there darkness in the source of our origin?
Can't
Is
be.
there shade of gray?
Nope.
Is there misleading?
Yeah.
There's no polarity here. Where is the source of your origin right now? Where is it? It's in you. Is there polarity in you? There can't be.
Can't be.
Yet, when we start doing this stuff, we walk right into polarity. Right? Because we're going to make judgments of what's right, wrong, good, bad. Don't we?
Polarity's in the other box.
Correct. Polarity's in the other box. Very good there. That's exactly right. So, when we're in perfect union, right? When we're in perfect union, this oneness, right, that the narrative talks about so much, with Father before the creation, this is the source of our origin and design, spirit, soul, and body. Can you embrace that thought? Because when you start to embrace that thought, and you're here, you're not going to make any judgment on what's right or wrong, good or bad, right? Because it's all internal. It's all you. Situation may never change, but you're going to change, and you're going to resist the polarity of judging. Right? What did Paul say? Judge
No man. Or
nothing before its
its
time. Right? You know what it says? Judge nothing before its time. Well, how can you do that? There's no polarity. It'll work its out. I mean, and so we get into the mess because we start giving away, right? We'll always give our attention to the things we desire. What are the desires of your heart? Where's your focus? You become what you focus on, right? I mean, that's where we started the class. We started the class at the beginning talking about looking, our wheels coming off and getting so focused over here on what's going on. We identify with it. Our vocabulary becomes that. We sow the seed of what that situation is, and we reap the harvest of that. There's the compounding of that. Then there's complaining. Then there's broadening the circle of offense. And then before you know it, this becomes the source of our information and our experience. I want you out of that. I don't want you there anymore. I want you in a position where there's no polarity and the source of your origin is not obscure. And that you begin to walk in the fullness of understanding that the plurality, the source of your origin, who you are, now dwells inside of you. The greater is in you. It is not in the world. It's not in the world's way, the world's system, the world's thoughts. And when we begin to understand that we're the ones that engage polarity, right? Go all the way back to the garden. 2 trees in the garden. One he said, eat all you want. Tree of life. Live forever. Eat the tree of life. Don't eat this one. Don't eat the tree of polarity. What was the lie? You eat the tree of polarity, you become just like him. He already was. And it always goes back. Polarity is a bad deal. And we get trapped in polarity because we start to make judgments. There was a story, I'll close with this story. There was a story of a guy got on a train and he was sitting there and there was a mother and had